say are 3 tips to help entrepreneurs get to 6 figures faster? What are the things that you wish you could go back and tell yourself?
Hire faster. So we've already talked about delegating. That is the number 1 tip. I'm not kidding. I don't care if it's just the grocery shopping. I don't care if it's just like someone to come over and do your laundry. Hire something that you can't stand doing, and you will immediately feel a burden lifted. Immediately. And I will say one more tip about that. Do not assume, even with business tasks, do not assume that you have to hire someone for part-time or full-time or this long drawn out thing. You can hire projects with Indeed or Upwork or any of these other Fiverr, any of these other things. You can hire just a project and get your feet wet with just a small project for business to be like, okay, I want them to do this or that. Don't be scared to do it. It gives you, there's a small dip when you usually hire someone, you maybe take a little bit of a hit, but then the growth is 10 times. And I've done it over and over and over. Every time I see, oh, that's going to cost me a little bit of money, but in 3 months, it's going to be choom. And that's what happens every time. So hire, whatever it is, hire someone, delegate something, get things off your plate so you can operate in your zone of genius. Number 2 is even if you have a bookkeeper, even if you have an accountant, keep close tabs on your numbers, because we all want it to be sunshines and rainbows and hey, business is going good, or I did this or did that, but it can get away from you as fast as as fast as you can ignore it, so keep tabs on your numbers. I suggest people do at least, once a month is at the very minimum, but sometimes once a week, you can just check in on your money and say, hey, money, how are we doing? What do we need? What do we not need? It's just another system and a process that you look at and say, this is a resource that gets me closer to my goals. How do I best use this resource? So keep an eye on your numbers. You should know, in my opinion, you should know at any moment, like, how much is your company profitable? How much are you actually making? What is your dollar per hour? What is your value when it comes to a monetary value, so that your tasks can meet your value and so on? And let's see, the 3rd tip to get to 6 figures faster. I just let me think on my feet for a second here, because there's so many, but I'm like narrowing it down. I hate the word faster. I do, because it's fast. But okay, stay away from the comparison monster.
Oh,
the comparison monster will kill you. Number 1, because all it does is make you feel like crap. Like no matter what, you can't compare. Same thing with you, Dr. Amanda. You cannot compare my chapter 20 to your chapter 1. And like, we have to know, if you are going to play the comparison game, give yourself a time limit, give yourself 15 minutes, and literally then write it down and be like, she has this, I don't. She has this. Okay. And then look at how petty it really is. Like, honestly, don't compare your chapters to somebody else's. You're at a different journey. You have different resources. You have different support. You have different hair. Like, it literally does not matter. Your journey is never going to be the same as someone else. But what you're allowed to do is compare you to you. So where were you a year ago? And how far have you come? And where would you like to go? Because I don't like to I give my pity parties or my looking back or my comparisons a time limit. It's like, you get 15 minutes to whine about this, and then you have to move on. So I give myself permission to feel all the feels, even if they're yucky, even if it's like, yeah, you're right, I do have FOMO, or I do have jealousy, or I do have any of these things. And then I examine it. I'm like, why? Why do I feel like this? How do I feel like this? And how the hell can I get out of this pit and move on to where I'm supposed to be? Because this ain't pretty. Like, so let's go and do right. So give yourself permission to have those little talks with yourself, your little pity parties, whatever they are, comparisons, and then look at you from last year, look at you from 10 years ago and say, oh my gosh, I have come a long way. And where do I want to go from here? Because comparison will literally fear you to death. You will sit there in the corner and cry if you're constantly looking at what everybody else is doing that you're not doing. So, different journeys, different paths, compare, but only to yourself.
So many good things. I'm looking at these 3 tips that you offered. So here they are. Recap for everyone. Get to 6 figures faster, as fast as you choose on your path. Hire faster. And let's show this one. Number 2, keep close tabs on the numbers. And number 3, stay away from the comparison monster. So these are gems of wisdom. I can see in my process and journey the exact same things, like going like, the faster that you decide to hire, the faster that you can step into your zone of genius. And it does at first feel that way. You're like, oh, I'm going to put this money up front. And it's a little bit scary. And it's kind of like taking the leap off of the cliff and then just going like, I trust this is going to work. And then you notice all this freedom because you freed yourself up from things that you no longer choose to be spending your time on. And then it, I always think of delegation as duplicating yourself. So you're taking parts of yourself like, oh, this person who used to be the janitor in my business or this person who used to be the bookkeeper in my business now gets delegated away, and I get to offload that part of it to someone who loves doing it. And then I get to step more and more into the time of what I choose to do. We talked a lot about delegation already. So what I wanted you to share here, when you say keep close tabs on your numbers, could you give like 3 numbers that you think are important for people to focus on as they're building their business? Like, is it expenses? Is it profit? Is it what are the numbers that they need to be aware of?
I'm more concerned with, I think, well, number one thing I want people to really understand, if I could even pick one of those, it would be track your time for 7 to 14 days. And I know that seems like a lot and people like roll their eyes and they don't do this task, but it was revolutionary to me. What I realized when I actually tracked every minute. Now you can just delegate this for your business or you can do your whole life. I did whole life. And I literally at 15-minute increments, I wrote down for 2 straight weeks exactly the tasks I was doing. There was no judgments, there was no lying, there was no anything. It was just like, what do I usually do during the day? And then I analyzed that and realized that like at that time that I did this, which was I think 7 or 8 years ago, I was making now, mind you, I was charging an hourly rate for coaching calls and things like that, but I was literally making $17.83 per hour. And at that time, I was like, like right now, that's almost minimum wage where most people live, and I was looking at that at that time and I was like, okay, I'm like, I for sure can do better than this. I'm like, with all the tasks I'm doing. And that's what really caused me to look at all of these things and say, what are minimum wage tasks? Because it's not that there's anything wrong with these things or that they're beneath you or something like that. Like we have to be willing to take out our trash and write our marketing emails. We have to do everything at first. But when I was looking at that, it really made me realize that like, if I'm getting this amount per hour from my clients, and yet my average per hour is $17.83. What am I going to do about that? Because this is the level I'm being paid, but not 40 hours, right? So I realized there was a lot of tasks that I could get off of that list once I actually took the time to write down the fact that I do dishes 5 days a week and I do them for about 35 minutes. And who else can fill that spot? Because what could I do? I can earn more than $17.83 an hour by not doing dishes than I am doing. Yeah. So I'm just using that as an example. Same thing with business tasks, same thing with that. So it's part of delegating, but more importantly, it's knowing how much you're paid per hour to do the things you're doing. If you go to a job and you punch in, you have an hourly rate. And regardless of what you're doing with that hour, you're making that much money and you're not going to make any more unless you work on commission. Well, as entrepreneurs, that's not true. We can actually change that number anytime we want by getting rid of these tasks. So my challenge and my tip is really track your time. You don't have to do 15-minute increments, but there's so much time that's lost. So I suggest 15-minute increments. Set a timer for even one whole day. And then just every 15 minutes, it goes off and you write down the exact tasks you did for the last 15 minutes. It doesn't take very long, but once you see that, I think you're going to be completely shocked at really how you do spend your time and what you could take off of your plate in order to give yourself an instant raise.
Man, genius. Okay. The thing that I think is amazing is that these tips you're giving are so simple to follow. And I always like to remind people that success leaves clues. So, Kristen, you're a 7-figure business owner. And I know that a lot of people here want that. Like that is something that you aspire to. So listen to Kristen. I so agree with you. When I've done time blocking and time tracking, I'm like blown away by how much it changes the way I spend my time and how I have a boost of up level when I'm aware of it. So, the things we're talking about here that are important, awareness. You got to be aware. If you don't know where you are, you don't know how to get where you want to go because you don't even have a starting point. So you got to track your time to know, how are you spending your time right now? Is this the best use of my time is one of my favorite questions that I ask myself all all day long. Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of my time? Because if it's not, delegate it away, drop it. So I always say drop, automate, delegate, drop, automate, delegate, right? And you can't do that unless you're aware of your time.